Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Reborn in Highschool DxD as a Lucifuge. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 71, Swift Victory. Outside the arena. Mitsuri-ne-san and Nezuko-ne-san are amazing. Everyone, let's cheer for them, Alice exclaimed to the three little girls from the Butterfly Mansion. Roy had assigned them the task of cheering, and they were doing their best to support everyone. Rias, watching the battle unfold, breathed a sigh of relief as Yubaluna, the bomb queen, was defeated. Era, they're quite strong. To think they defeated the bomb queen so easily, Akino commented. She knew that if she had faced Yubaluna, it wouldn't have been such a straightforward victory. And if Yubaluna had used the Tears of the Phoenix, Akino might have even lost. Nezuko is so strong, Kaneko said, her eyes filled with admiration and a hint of envy. They were around the same age, but the difference in their strength was vast, making her feel a bit discouraged. Although she had learned breathing styles, her beginner-level mastery didn't provide a significant boost in power yet. Sona and her peerage were also surprised by the strength of Roy's team. The appearance of Garridos had already shocked them. When Garridos was no longer able to fight, Sona had been worried. But then, two more high-class devil-level rooks appeared among Roy's servants, leaving her astonished. Sona realized she didn't know her little brother as well as she thought. Thinking back to their agreement, a blush crept onto her cheeks. Underworld, Raiding Game Arena. The audience erupted in commotion as they witnessed the defeat of Riser's queen and his team's disadvantage. That kid from the Lucifuge clan is impressive. He really defeated Riser's queen so easily. Have you noticed? Not a single member of Roy's team has been eliminated yet. Yeah. They're incredibly strong. Isn't that Lucifuge kid supposed to be a failure? How can he be this powerful? Riser is in trouble now. Some devils, particularly those close to the Phoenix clan, were displeased by the praise for Roy and the criticism of Riser. There's no way he can defeat Riser. That Lucifuge kid, no matter how hard he tries, it's useless. Riser has the Phoenix's immortality. Exactly. He can't do anything against immortality. Voices of doubt and mockery towards Roy filled the arena. It was understandable. After all, Roy was known as a talentless failure. Riser, on the other hand, was one of the strongest of the new generation of devils, and he possessed the seemingly invincible power of immortality. Most of the audience favored Riser. Back in the subspace. After defeating Yubaluna, Roy's team turned their attention to the remaining two servants, Ravel and Carlamine. Carlamine felt the weight of their gazes and broke out in a cold sweat. Ravel, flapping her fiery wings in the air, wiped the sweat from her brow and said awkwardly, "Hey, don't look at me. I don't fight." Roy chuckled but didn't bother with them. He looked towards the principal's office in the new school building, Riser's base. "Riser Phoenix, how long are you going to hide? If you don't come out soon, all your servants will be defeated," Roy taunted. The girls turned towards the new school building. "Ha ha, you clowns. Do you think you can defeat me just by taking out my servants?" Riser, dressed in his red suit, finally emerged, his arrogance unwavering despite the loss of most of his peerage. "Oni-sama. Riser-sama." Carlamine and Ravel sighed in relief upon seeing him. "Finally decided to show your face, Riser Phoenix?" Roy scoffed, his arms crossed. "Humph. You're just a failure from the Lucifuge clan. What makes you think you can compete with me for Rias?" "And I'll return that punch you gave me the other day," Riser sneered, his anger rising as he recalled the humiliation of being caught off guard and punched by Roy. "Failure?" Roy shrugged, unfazed by Riser's repeated insults. "If you think I'm a failure, how about a wager?" "What?" Riser was taken aback. Let's bet on the outcome of this rating game. If you win, I'll admit to being a failure, Roy proposed. And if I win, you'll have to admit that you're the failure. So, do you have the guts to accept? Roy challenged, looking at Riser with a smirk. Riser couldn't resist the provocation. Ha 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 ha, a mere failure dares to challenge me to a bet? Fine, I accept. Roy smirked inwardly. It seemed the title of failure would follow Riser forever. Roy, let us fight him. Mitsuri and Nezuko volunteered. Riser Phoenix was a high-class devil. Only those two could fight him head-on. However, Roy shook his head. Since he's the king, I'll handle this myself. It was only fitting for the kings to face each other. Moreover, even Mitsuri and Nezuko's combined strength might not be enough to defeat Riser. Nezuko's blood demon art was powerful, but even Rias's power of destruction, which could annihilate anything, couldn't harm Riser in the original story. Nezuko's blood demon art likely wouldn't pose a threat to him either. Roy, go! Defeat that arrogant fool, the girls cheered. Humph! No one can defeat Oni-sama. Ravel declared haughtily. Saya and the others glared at her. Please ignore me. Ravel cowered under their intense gazes. She quickly retreated behind Riser. Roy chuckled at her reaction. He was quite fond of Ravel, the tsundere girl with the drill-shaped hair. In the original story, Ravel had become infatuated with Issei after he defeated Riser. Roy wondered if Ravel would fall for him if he defeated Riser instead. Her drill hair must be very bouncy, he mused, his thoughts drifting in an inappropriate direction. Shaking off his distraction, Roy stepped forward. He held out his hand, and ice crystals bloomed, forming a sort of ice roses. With a smirk, Roy's form blurred, then vanished. What? Riser blinked in surprise. Looking for me? Roy's voice came from behind him. Riser realized that Roy had already moved behind him. The figure that had been standing there was just an afterimage. Then, to his shock, he found himself bisected. It had all happened so fast that Riser couldn't even react. However, such an injury posed no threat to him. He regenerated instantly. Ha, impressive, but useless against me. Riser declared, his arrogance returning. He unleashed a wave of crimson flames. These were the flames of the Phoenix, capable of incinerating anything. Ice-breathing, first form, flocking ice blades. Roy casually swung his ice rose sword, countering Riser's flames. He had created ice breathing based on water breathing, utilizing his ice affinity to unleash its full potential. Countless ice projectiles, like a flock of birds, shot towards Riser. Riser's flames were instantly extinguished, and the remaining ice projectiles struck him, riddling his body with wounds. Impossible! How can my Phoenix flames be extinguished by ice magic? Riser exclaimed in disbelief, then his expression morphed into fury. He had been pushed back so easily in just a brief exchange. And Roy remained unscathed. This enraged him. Ordinary ice magic couldn't extinguish the flames of the Phoenix. But Roy's ice, like Riser's flames, was a bloodline ability. His ice powers were on par with the Phoenix clan's Phoenix flames. Seeing Roy's silence, Riser unleashed even more flames, filling the sky with a crimson inferno. Roy smirked and swung his sword again. Ice breathing, second form, Ice Dragon Swirling Tail. A massive ice dragon emerged, roaring silently as it charged into the flames. The ice dragon rampaged through the inferno, extinguishing most of the flames within moments. Damn it, what magic is this? Riser couldn't believe his eyes as his flames were extinguished. The ice dragon, having cleared the flames, crashed into him. Boom! Riser had no time to dodge. The ground cracked, and dust billowed. When the dust settled, a massive crater was revealed where Riser had been standing. The spectators in the arena were in an uproar. After a while, Riser emerged from the crater, his arrogance replaced by fury. But then, he burst into laughter. Ha ha ha, Roy Lucifuge, I acknowledge your strength. But you can't defeat me. Riser seemed to have realized something, and his confidence returned. His plan was to exhaust Roy with his immortality. Although Roy had more servants, Riser could still use the tears of the Phoenix once more. He wasn't afraid of a battle of attrition. Having figured this out, Riser stopped attacking and simply looked at Roy with a smug grin. Roy saw through his plan and scoffed. Riser, do you really think I have no way to deal with you? Riser remained arrogant. Show me what you've got. He didn't believe Roy possessed any power that could truly threaten him. Roy chuckled. You're in for a surprise. He slowly raised his hand towards Riser and uttered a few words. Secret art, I see 9 dragons. The temperature plummeted, as if winter had suddenly arrived, causing Riser to shiver. He recalled the feeling of being struck by the ice dragon earlier. The intense cold had slowed his blood flow and suppressed his phoenix flames, hindering his regeneration. 9 massive chunks of ice materialized in the sky, then transformed into 9 ice dragons. The dragons were incredibly lifelike, a magnificent sight. Riser felt a sense of dread wash over him as he looked at the ice dragons. The dragons roared silently and converged on him. There was no explosion, no billowing dust. The 9 ice dragons collided, merging into a towering ice mountain, encasing Riser within. His expression of fear was frozen in time. It's so beautiful. Asia gasped, admiring the ice mountain with its 9 encircling dragons. Roy's technique was like a work of art, powerful, majestic, and breathtakingly beautiful. The girls were mesmerized. Is he defeated? Saya asked, looking at the frozen Riser. Of course, Roy replied confidently. Although he hadn't used his full power, this technique was beyond Riser's ability to break free. I don't believe it. Oni-sama has the flames of the phoenix. How can he be frozen? Ravel retorted, refusing to accept it. She knew the power of the phoenix flames. There was no way they could be suppressed so easily. She firmly believed that Riser would break free soon. But Riser remained frozen, his expression unchanged. What's going on? The girls were confused. If Riser had lost, he should have been ejected immediately. Riser Phoenix has lost his fighting ability. The winner of this rating game is Roy Lucifuge. Graphia's voice declared. A beam of red energy struck the ice mountain, melting it instantly. Riser, still frozen, dissolved into particles of light and was ejected from the subspace. Graphia's voice reached Roy's ears, explaining what had happened. It turned out that the teleportation hadn't failed. Riser had been unable to be ejected while encased in ice. Roy chuckled. The one who had melted his icy 9 dragons was likely someone from the Phoenix clan. To melt his ice so easily, they must have possessed Mao-class power. Roy shook his head, dismissing those thoughts. Chapter 72, The Engagement Party. With Graphia's declaration of the match's end, Ravel glanced at Roy with a complex expression, then she and Carlamine were teleported away. Roy and his peerage were also transported back to the arena. The rating game between Roy and Riser had concluded. The audience was in an uproar. They couldn't believe that Riser Phoenix had been so thoroughly defeated. He had been completely dominated throughout the match. By the end, he hadn't managed to defeat a single member of Roy's peerage. Even his vaunted immortality had been useless. This unexpected outcome sparked a flurry of discussion among the devils. I can't believe Riser was defeated so easily. Roy is incredibly strong. I heard someone called him a failure before. What an idiot. I don't know if Roy was a failure before, but Riser will definitely be known as one now. Riser was too conceited. The devils hadn't forgotten the wager between Roy and Riser. Whoever lost had to admit to being a failure. Although the rating game was over, the repercussions were far from over. News of Roy's victory spread throughout the underworld like wildfire. Ser Ordbale, the leader of the young generation, was once a failure who couldn't use magic. However, through relentless training, he gained immense strength and speed, becoming known as the Lion King. Upon hearing about Roy's victory, Serorg became interested in him. As a fellow failure who had defied expectations, he expressed his desire to challenge Roy to a rating game. This news caused another wave of commotion in the underworld. Another individual who took a keen interest in Roy was Diodora Astaroth, a young devil with black hair and perpetually half-closed eyes. He was a blood relative of the current Beelzebub and had a twisted obsession with nuns, taking pleasure in torturing them. In the original story, he had set his sights on Asia Argento, who was a nun at the time. He had feigned a serious injury to lure Asia into healing him, then, after being exiled from the church, he had attempted to take advantage of her. However, Roy had intervened and thwarted his plans. Now, seeing Asia again, Diodora's sinister thoughts resurfaced. Meanwhile, after returning from the subspace, Roy invited Rias and Sona back to his castle for a celebration. The girls chattered excitedly, their voices filled with joy over their victory in the rating game. Shizuka, Siko, and Kene went to prepare dinner. Roy, Rias, Sona, and the others gathered in the living room. Roy also informed Graphia, inviting her to join the celebration. In the living room, Rias and Aquino whispered to each other, occasionally glancing at Roy. Rias' cheeks were flushed, a beautiful sight. Sona, however, seemed preoccupied, quietly sipping her tea. Roy noticed that Asia seemed a bit down. "Asia, what's wrong?" he asked. "Shouldn't you be happy about winning the rating game?" "But I didn't do anything to help," Asia replied, her eyes welling up with tears. Roy was amused by her concern. He gently patted her head. "Silly, how could you not have helped? You're the team's healer." Asia blushed at the term healer. Then, she said with worry, "But I didn't even use Twilight Healing." "That's even better." "It means no one was injured," Roy explained. Asia's eyes widened in realization. "Do you understand now?" "Yes." Although Asia had grown up in the church and hadn't received formal education, she quickly grasped the simple logic. The celebration began that evening. Everyone was in high spirits, enjoying the food and drinks. Even Roy, who usually didn't drink, had a few glasses. Slightly tipsy, he retired to his room to rest. Just as he lay down, two figures slipped into his bed and snuggled up to him. Roy, still drowsy, instinctively wrapped his arms around them. A faint, sweet fragrance tickled his nose, bringing him closer to wakefulness. It was Shinobu and Kane. Roy was familiar with the unique scent of each girl and wouldn't mistake them for anyone else. He was surprised, though. Why were the Kocho sisters here? Shouldn't it be Siko or one of the others? Roy didn't know that Kane had taken the initiative and dragged Shinobu along. Back in the Demon Slayer world, Shinobu had promised Roy that if he saved her sister, she would let him devour her. Roy had indeed saved Kane, but he didn't want to take advantage of her vulnerability. He also didn't like forcing anyone, so he hadn't made any moves. However, Kane was worried. She knew how much her sister liked Roy. But neither of them addressed the issue, so Kane, as the elder sister, decided to take matters into her own hands. She hadn't expected Shinobu to be unwilling to go alone, insisting on bringing Kane along. Roy was unaware of all this. He simply couldn't resist the temptation of the delicious meal presented to him. He pulled the two girls closer and 3 days passed quickly. Today was the day of his engagement ceremony with Rias. Roy and the girls boarded the train to the underworld. Unlike ordinary trains, this one was luxurious, with an interior like a private jet. It was also incredibly fast. They soon arrived at the castle where the ceremony would be held. The castle was packed with guests. Graphia pulled Roy along, introducing him to various devils and guiding him through the tedious formalities and etiquette. Roy finally breathed a sigh of relief when the engagement ceremony ended and the banquet began. He led Rias, now officially his fiancée, to a quiet corner. Looking at the blushing Rias, Roy smiled. After all the twists and turns, Rias was finally his. However, the other girls weren't as thrilled. Especially Asia, who was pouting like a hamster with its cheeks stuffed with food, glaring at Rias. Roy chuckled at her jealousy. Just then, a tall, imposing figure approached them. "Yo, Serorg," Roy greeted him with a wave. He had met Serorg, thanks to Graphia's introductions. "Yo, Roy," Serorg replied. "Roy, I'd like to formally challenge you to a rating game." Serorg's declaration drew the attention of those around them. A rating game? Why? Roy was confused. "Don't misunderstand. I'm simply interested in fighting you," Serorg explained. Roy understood. Serorg was a battle maniac. Having witnessed Roy's overwhelming victory against Riser, another heavenly king, it was natural for him to be interested in a match. "So he sees me as prey, huh?" Roy thought with amusement. "Very well, I accept your challenge." "When will the match be held?" he agreed readily. Serorg didn't answer immediately. "I heard you don't have a queen yet," he said instead. "That's correct," Roy confirmed. He hadn't revealed that Graphia was his queen. "Then we'll schedule the match after you find a queen." Roy smiled. Serorg was a true warrior. Knowing that Roy lacked a queen, he postponed the match until Roy had a complete peerage. "No problem," Roy agreed. Their conversation sparked another wave of discussion among the devils. Serorg has challenged Roy to a rating game. I wonder who's stronger, Serorg or Roy? I can't wait for their match. I think Serorg will win. After all, he's the strongest of the young generation. I think Roy is stronger. He completely crushed Riser Phoenix. Rias, hearing Roy admit to not having a queen, was confused. They all knew that Graphia was his queen. If Nasan participated, it wouldn't be a fair fight. But if she doesn't, that guy's pride would be hurt, and he might refuse the match. "So, I had to do this," Roy explained with a shrug, seeing their puzzled expressions. "It seems I'll need to find another queen," he thought to himself. As for the rating game against Serorg, he wasn't concerned about the timing. The girls understood. Just then, another person approached them. It was Diodora Astaroth, with his black hair, red eyes, and perpetually half-closed eyes. They say those with half-closed eyes are never up to any good, and this guy was no exception. "Roy-san, I am Diodora Astaroth." "I have a small request," Diodora said, bowing politely. "Oh? If it's an unwelcome request, then don't bother." "It's better for everyone that way," Roy replied casually, not even bothering to get up. He didn't look at Diodora directly and continued sipping his tea. Roy hadn't forgotten how this guy had tried to harm Asia. Now, he was here again, clearly up to no good. Diodora was enraged by Roy's dismissive attitude but maintained his composure. "I'll be frank. I'd like to exchange bishops with you," he proposed with a smile. Asia, Shizuka, and the other bishops glared at him, as did the rest of the girls. They considered each other family. How could they be used as bargaining chips? However, the final decision rested with Roy, so they all looked at him expectantly. "No way." "Get lost," Roy said, waving him away dismissively. Diodora's expression remained unchanged despite the insult. "I understand," he said with a smile, as if he had genuinely given up. But instead of leaving, he approached Asia and reached for her hand. Slash! A flash of cold light, and Diodora's hand was severed before he could even touch Asia. Blood splattered, and Diodora finally reacted. A cack! He screamed in agony. The commotion drew the attention of the surrounding devils. "Master!" Several girls with vacant expressions, dressed in maid outfits, rushed to Diodora's side. These were the nuns and saints Diodora had abducted and tortured. They were all mentally broken. "Roy Lucifuge, why you?" Diodora clutched his severed hand, glaring at Roy in disbelief. He hadn't expected Roy to suddenly attack him. Roy shrugged nonchalantly. "I told you to get lost, but you didn't listen. And you even tried to lay your hands on my Asia. You're playing with fire." His attitude enraged Diodora. But he didn't retaliate. Those present at the engagement party were all allies of the Gremory and Lucifuge clans. If he attacked, he would undoubtedly suffer severe consequences. In the end, Diodora could only leave with his servants, defeated and humiliated. "I don't think he'll let this go," Sarord commented, standing beside Roy. "Neither will I," Roy replied, his eyes narrowing with killing intent as he watched Diodora depart. He wouldn't forgive Diodora for what he had done to Asia and for his continued lecherous intentions towards her. However, he couldn't openly initiate a conflict. Since the deaths of God and the original mouse, the devil population had dwindled. To prevent further losses, the current mouse had established rules prohibiting devils from killing each other. That's why Roy hadn't killed Diodora outright. He wasn't powerful enough to disregard the rules of the underworld yet. But that didn't mean he wouldn't eliminate Diodora. If Diodora sought revenge, he would likely collude with the Cows Brigade to obtain the power of the dragon. Roy would deal with him then. Roy. Asia's eyes filled with tears of gratitude, seeing how he had defended her. "Ha, Asia belongs to me forever. I won't let anyone take you away," Roy reassured her, patting her head. "Wah!" Asia was deeply touched. After the engagement party, Roy returned to his normal life. Rias also moved into his castle. Chapter 73, Ica Bites Back? 1,000-Armed Cannon. Every day, Roy would teleport to the Occult Research Club with Rias and the others before heading to their respective classrooms. "Bucho, you're finally back." "Yay, Bucho is here. We were so worried you'd abandon us." As soon as Roy entered the classroom, Ica, Murayama, and Kate surrounded him, their voices filled with dramatic relief. He had been absent for quite a while, preparing for the raiding game against Riser. Rias had handled the arrangements for their absence, and Roy hadn't had a chance to inform his classmates, causing them to worry. "Aha, sorry about that. I had some matters to attend to, so I had to take a long leave." "I apologize for making you worry," Roy said, touched by their concern. "Bucho, you're so mean. Making us worry like that." Murayama and Kate clung to his arms, pouting. "You have to make it up to us," Ica declared, adjusting her glasses. Yes, compensation," the other two chimed in. Faced with their adorable pleas, Roy couldn't refuse. "What kind of compensation would you like?" he asked. "Go on a date with us. This weekend." Roy realized he had been set up. They had already planned everything. But he couldn't say no to such a request. Asia and Saya glared at the three girls, but they remained silent. The other classmates looked on with envy. Only those three could act so casually with their beloved prince. The teacher arrived, and they returned to their seats for class. During the lesson, Ica nudged Roy with her elbow. "What's up?" Roy whispered, turning to her. Ica leaned closer, her face slightly flushed, her warm breath tickling his ear. "Bucho, I recently learned a new technique. Would you like to try it?" "Oh?" Roy wondered if she had mastered the breathing style. It had been almost a month. He had promised them a surprise if they could learn water breathing within a month. The surprise, of course, was to make them his servants. "Sure, let's try it," Roy agreed readily. Ica's blush deepened. She glanced at the teacher, then, taking advantage of a moment of distraction, lowered her head and rested it on Roy's lap. "Eh? What are you doing?" Roy whispered, confused. "Didn't Bucho want to try my new technique?" Ica continued with her actions. "Did you read another Eki manga?" Roy asked, recognizing her intentions. Ica mumbled in response. "Just happened to see it, huh? Ow. Hey, be careful. Don't bite too hard." Roy glanced at the teacher, impressed by Ica's boldness. "She's really going for it during class, huh?" he thought with amusement. Time flew by, and soon it was the end of the school day. "By the way, I heard some people talking about many students taking leave or leaving early. What's that about? Roy asked Aika, noticing the empty seats in their classroom. It's true. But after examinations, they were diagnosed with anemia, Aika explained, adjusting her glasses. However, there's one thing in common among those girls: they all have large breasts. It's quite strange. Oh, I see. This situation reminded Roy of an incident in the original story. A stray alchemist from the underworld, specializing in monster research, had escaped. This alchemist had created a monster that could absorb life force and magic from women. After absorbing enough magic, it would bear fruits that caused breast enlargement. Murayama and Kates had fallen victim to it in the original story. Roy glanced at the two girls, relieved to see they were fine. It seemed they hadn't been affected yet. Perhaps the incident had just begun. But this matter had to be resolved quickly. Don't worry about this. I won't be going to the kendo club today. You all focus on your training, Roy said, leaving the classroom with Asia and Saya. Eh? Aika, Murayama, and Kates looked at Roy in surprise. He usually went to the kendo club every day. Why was he making an exception today? And this incident with the students seemed quite strange. The three girls were curious and wanted to investigate. They decided to search for clues and uncover the truth. Meanwhile, Roy met up with Rias at the Occult Research Club, and they teleported back to his castle. Roy informed the girls about the students' absences and his suspicion of a monster being involved. Since Kuo Academy was under Rias' jurisdiction, Roy didn't want to overstep his boundaries. He had to show Rias respect. Just as Rias was about to investigate, a message arrived from the Gremory clan in the underworld. A stray alchemist specializing in monster research had escaped. Combining this information with Roy's observation, Rias realized that the alchemist was likely responsible for the incidents at school. Akino, Kaneko, we have work to do, Rias declared, activating a teleportation magic circle. Yes, Bucho. Akino and Kaneko replied, stepping into the circle. I'll come along. I have nothing better to do anyway, Roy said, joining them. But my magic circle. Rias began. Leave it to me, Roy interrupted, knowing what she was about to say. Rias' magic circle could only transport herself and her servants. But Roy's magic circle could transport others as well. With a wave of his hand, an ice-blue magic circle enveloped Rias' crimson one. In the next instant, they vanished. They found the alchemist conducting experiments in an abandoned factory. Greetings, stray alchemist. The higher-ups have ordered your arrest. I advise you to surrender, Rias declared, her voice calm yet commanding. Rias is so charismatic, Roy commented, impressed. Era, Rias is stealing the spotlight, Akino teased. I surrender. Facing the Gremory princess and the Lucifuge heir, I stand no chance, the alchemist declared, raising his hands in submission. Rias turned to Akino. Akino, apprehend him and send him to the underworld for trial. Understood. Akino stepped forward, conjuring ropes of lightning to bind the alchemist. Was it over just like that? Not quite. The bound alchemist suddenly burst into laughter, his expression smug. It's too late. I've already accomplished what I set out to do, he declared before being teleported away. It seems this isn't over yet. The creature causing trouble at school must be a monster created by this alchemist, Rias deduced. It's simple. We just need to find and eliminate this monster, Roy said with a snap of his fingers. He activated a magic circle and teleported away with Rias, Akino, and Kaneko. Earlier, upon learning about the incident at school, Roy had instructed Aoi Kanzaki to search for the monster with her jumpluff. Aoi, with the protection of Nezuko and Mitsuri, had successfully located the monster. In the original story, this plant-type monster, after absorbing a significant amount of life force and magic, became incredibly powerful. Even Rias was no match for it. That's why Aoi, upon discovering the monster, didn't engage it directly and instead informed Roy immediately. A blue magic circle appeared before Aoi, Nezuko, and Mitsuri. "Roy-sama, the monster is over there." Aoi pointed towards an open space where a plant-like monster, resembling a Rafflesia arnoldii, was rooted. A group of female students walked towards the monster in a daze. The monster extended two tendrils, absorbing their life force and magic. The girls, seemingly unharmed, walked back towards the school. "It seems those girls haven't been significantly affected. But now that I've found you, I, Rias Gremory, will eliminate you," Rias declared, approaching the monster with Akino and Kaneko. "Rias, how about I take care of it?" Roy offered. Rias smiled at him. "No need, Roy. This is my responsibility." Roy sighed. "She's quite stubborn, but I like that," he thought. "Well then, I'll just have to step in later." "Let's go." Rias charged forward, unleashing her power of destruction. Akino took to the sky, her body crackling with lightning. She summoned a bolt of lightning that struck the monster. Kaneko, in her usual straightforward manner, uprooted a massive tree, requiring several people to lift, and swung it at the monster. The plant monster, awakened by their attacks, emerged from its large flower, revealing a beak-like head. With a roar, it unleashed countless vine-like tendrils, forming a defensive net. Rias, Akino, and Kaneko's attacks struck the net, but they had no effect. "What?" Rias was stunned. Her attacks were completely nullified. The monster retaliated, its tendrils lashing out at the girls. Swoosh! 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 Just as the tendrils were about to ensnare them, Roy appeared with incredible speed, rescuing the three girls. "Honestly, Rias, you should learn to rely on your fiancé," Roy chided, holding Rias in a princess carry. "I'm sorry," Rias apologized, blushing. Although they were engaged, she didn't want to rely on Roy for everything. She wanted to be a capable woman who could stand by his side. Seeing her sincere apology, Roy smiled. "I'll handle this now." "Okay," Rias replied obediently, stepping behind Roy. Roy glared at the monster, his eyes filled with cold determination. He extended his hand and clenched it. Secret art, Ice Thousand-Armed Cannon. Inspired by Isaac Netero's legendary ability, a 100-meter-tall statue of cannon, made entirely of ice, materialized before them. The cannon statue moved, its countless arms striking the monster like a barrage of punches. Boom! 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 The ground trembled under the cannon's relentless assault, dust and debris filling the air. When the cannon finally stopped and the dust settled, the area where the monster had been was completely devastated. A massive crater, hundreds of meters wide, marked the spot. There was no sign of the monster, only some strange liquid remaining as evidence of its existence. Rias and the others were stunned by Roy's overwhelming display of power. The 100-meter-tall cannon, unleashing a flurry of punches. It was a brutal yet awe-inspiring spectacle. Amazing. That's incredible. As expected of Roy-sama. Aoi and the others were speechless. "Roy, how many more techniques do you have?" Rias asked, her curiosity piqued. "How many techniques?" Roy stroked his chin thoughtfully. "I have many more. Come to my room tonight, and we can explore them together." Rias blushed, understanding his suggestive invitation. Seeing her flustered reaction, Roy decided to stop teasing her. "Since this is settled, let's head back," he said, clapping his hands. Just as he was about to activate a teleportation circle, he paused, sensing something. He turned towards a certain direction. "It seems there's a stray devil over there." Rias frowned. After their previous cleanup, almost all the stray devils around Kuo Town had been eliminated. She hadn't expected another one to appear so soon. "This is my negligence." "Don't blame yourself, Rias. Let's go check it out," Roy said, interrupting her self-reproach. They headed towards the location where Roy had sensed the stray devil. They soon found it. To their surprise, the stray devil was fighting three girls. Or rather, the three girls were desperately dodging the stray devil's attacks. Roy instantly recognized them as Aika, Murayama, and Keitase. Earlier that afternoon, Roy had told them not to worry about the students' absences. However, Aika was too curious about Roy's unusual behavior. So, she had dragged Murayama and Keitase along to investigate the cause of the students' strange behavior. They had followed the students who had been enthralled by the monster, but they hadn't expected to encounter a stray devil. To protect the defenseless students, the three girls had no choice but to fight the stray devil. This was the scene Roy and the others had stumbled upon. If not for the month of breathing styles training, the three girls would have been devoured by now. Kakik, you three little cuties, stop running and let us eat you. The stray devil, nearly 5 meters tall, with crimson eyes and a hideous appearance, towered over the girls like a giant. Chapter 74, 3 more servants join the ranks. Humph. I'll eliminate you, Rias declared, ready to unleash her fury on the stray devil. Roy, however, gently held her back. Hold on, Rias. Let's observe for a bit, he said with a smile. Rias, though puzzled, complied. It's breathing styles, she exclaimed, her eyes widening as she recognized the technique the three girls were using to evade the stray devil's attacks. Those three were using breathing styles, a technique that only Roy knew. What was their connection to him? Rias looked at Roy questioningly. I saw some potential in them, so I taught them breathing styles, Roy explained casually. But they haven't mastered it yet. Facing that stray devil is dangerous, Mitsuri commented, observing the three girls. Without proper mastery of breathing styles, they were no match for the stray devil. I believe in them, Roy said, his gaze filled with confidence as he watched the three girls. They were on the verge of mastering the technique. Once they did, they should be able to defeat the stray devil if they worked together. This battle was precisely what they needed. Aika, what do we do? We're going to die at this rate. Murayama cried out, dodging the stray devil's attacks. Yeah, let's run. Keitase added, panting heavily. No. If we run, those girls will be eaten, Aika declared resolutely. Earlier, when they encountered the stray devil, one of its attacks had accidentally struck a girl who had been enthralled by the monster. The girl was now unconscious. If they abandoned her, she would die. But we'll all die here if we don't think of something. Murayama's words gave Aika pause. Their lives versus the life of that one girl, the choice seemed obvious. But Aika couldn't bring herself to abandon the girl. Was there truly no other way? In this moment of crisis, Aika felt a sense of calm descend upon her. Her breathing became steady and rhythmic. Breathing? Aika suddenly recalled the time Roy taught them breathing styles. Back then, Roy had effortlessly sliced through a wooden post with a single swing of his sword. Remembering that scene, Aika's eyes lit up. She took a deep breath, visibly inhaling a large amount of air. Power surged through her body. She had activated water breathing. With a determined smile, Aika charged towards the stray devil. Aika! Murayama and Keitase gasped. Aika effortlessly dodged the stray devil's fist and struck its arm with her wooden sword. Thwack! Blood splattered. Aika had actually injured the stray devil with just a wooden sword. Murayama and Keitase were stunned. However, Aika frowned as she looked at the shallow wound on the stray devil's arm. Such a minor injury wouldn't affect the stray devil at all. She dodged another attack and retreated. Use breathing styles. It's the only way we can defeat it, she urged Murayama and Keitase. Breathing styles? The two girls weren't stupid. Recalling Roy's demonstration and witnessing Aika's attack, they understood. Their breathing changed, and they unconsciously activated water breathing. Their fatigue vanished, replaced by a surge of energy. Aika smiled, seeing that they had also grasped the technique. Just then, a flow of information appeared in her mind. Her eyes widened, and she shouted, "Let's go!" Yes. Murayama and Keitase replied in unison. The three girls charged towards the stray devil. Murayama and Keitase drew its attention, while Aika leaped into the air, positioning herself above the stray devil's neck. Water breathing, first form, water surface slash. She shouted. Aika's wooden sword, enhanced by water breathing, sliced through the stray devil's neck like a wave crashing against the shore. Thwack! Blood gushed out as the stray devil's head was severed. Thud! Its massive body collapsed to the ground. The three girls, exhausted but victorious, collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. We finally killed it. Huff, huff. How can such scary creature exist in this world? By the way, Aika, what was that move you used? Murayama asked curiously. It just appeared in my mind. I don't know, Aika replied, shaking her head. Just then. Clap, clap, clap. Well done, a voice praised them. Bucho, the three girls exclaimed in unison. Roy smiled at their surprised reactions. He brought the three girls and the unconscious student back to his castle. In the living room, Roy explained the situation to Aika, Murayama, and Keitase. They finally learned what that creature was, a stray devil. They couldn't believe such things existed in this world. And their beloved Bucho was a devil noble. They didn't know what that meant exactly, but it sounded impressive. Remember the surprise I promised if you mastered breathing styles within a month? Roy asked with a smile. The surprise? What is it? I'm so excited. The three girls looked at him with anticipation. This is your surprise. Roy revealed 3 pawn pieces. Pieces? The girls looked at the pieces with confusion. These are evil pieces. If you merge with them, you'll become my devil servants, Roy explained. Become devils? Become Bucho's servants? The girls grasped the key points. Does that mean we can be with Bucho forever? Aika asked, adjusting her glasses. You could say that. Then I accept. Aika took one of the pieces without hesitation. She had always admired Roy, perhaps even to an obsessive degree. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been so bold as to bite him during class. Now, presented with this opportunity, she wouldn't refuse. Murayama and Keitase, seeing Aika's immediate acceptance, also reached out and took a piece each. Roy smiled. He then proceeded with the reincarnation ritual. Soon, the 3 girls were successfully transformed into devils. Congratulations, Roy. You've gained 3 more exceptional servants, Ria said, her voice laced with both admiration and envy. Why couldn't she find such exceptional servants? Rias looked at Aika, Murayama, and Keitase, feeling a pang of jealousy. Roy chuckled, seeing her reaction. Rias, your standards are too high. Normal humans have great potential too, you know. Exactly. I've been telling you that for a long time, but you never listen. Aquino chimed in with a smile. Aquino. Rias pouted, but she knew they were right. Aika, Murayama, and Keitase were ordinary humans with no sacred gears or special bloodlines. Yet, after just a month of practicing breathing styles, they could defeat low-class devils. And after becoming devils, their strength was already approaching that of middle-class devils. With a bit more training, they would be as strong as Kaneko. Rias couldn't help but feel envious. She decided that from tomorrow onwards, she would actively search for talented students in Kuo Academy. To celebrate the addition of 3 new members, Shizuka and the others prepared a grand feast. After dinner, Roy waited alone in his room. Every night, Siko and the others would take turns visiting him. Roy didn't interfere with their arrangement and was actually quite curious who it would be tonight. Click. The door opened. A graceful figure entered the dark room. Rias? Don't speak, Rias whispered, covering his mouth with her hand. Earlier, while they were eliminating the monster, Roy had jokingly suggested that Rias come to his room tonight to explore his techniques. He hadn't expected her to actually show up. Roy didn't hold back, showcasing his various techniques. They spent the entire night together, their passionate embrace lasting until dawn. Their peaceful daily life resumed. One day, however, Rias brought home a new girl. This is Abe, the captain of the tennis club, Rias introduced her with a smile. She's from the Abe clan, a family of magicians. She's now my bishop. After Roy's advice, Rias had lowered her standards when searching for servants. She had discovered Abe, but had initially been reluctant to become a devil. Rias had put in a lot of effort to persuade her. Nice to meet you all, greeted everyone with a bow. She was a beautiful girl with long, wavy blonde hair and a stunning figure. Roy recognized her. She hadn't appeared in the anime, but she was in the manga. When she was forced into an arranged marriage by her father, she had sought help from Rias. However, was supposed to have a low opinion of the devils at Kuo Academy. Roy wondered how Rias had managed to convince her to become her servant. Didn't seem to dislike devils as much as she was supposed to. After the introductions, Rias turned to Akino and Kaneko. We just received a mission to eliminate a stray devil. This is a good opportunity for everyone to get to know each other. Let's get ready to depart. I have some free time. I'll come along, Roy offered. Rias nodded in agreement. Bucho, we want to go too. Aika, Murayama, and Kates raised their hands eagerly. They usually trained at Roy's castle after school but returned home at night. Nezuko, Saya, and the others also looked at him expectantly. Alright, everyone can come, Roy relented, except for Shizuka and Siko, who were busy preparing dinner. Come back soon. Shizuka called out from the kitchen, waving a spoon. Don't worry, we'll be back before dinner. Roy assured her. He activated a teleportation circle, and they vanished. This is the place, right? Roy looked at the abandoned warehouse. Yes, the stray devil is inside, Rias confirmed. I can sense its presence, Kaneko added. Since the higher-ups issued an extermination order, this stray devil must be dangerous. Be careful, everyone, Rias warned. Roy shrugged, unconcerned. He glanced at the girls behind him and felt a bit sorry for the stray devil. It probably didn't expect to be ganged up on by so many people. They opened the warehouse door and entered. Ah! A frail girl with blue hair was cowering behind a pipe, gasping for breath. Someone's injured. Aika exclaimed, mistaking the girl for a human. She was about to approach her when Roy stopped her. Don't be fooled. That's the stray devil, he warned. Eh? That cute girl? Aika, Murayama, and Kates were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe such an adorable girl could be a stray devil. Roar! Suddenly, the girl's appearance changed, transforming into a monstrous spider-like creature. It lunged at them with a roar. Aika, Murayama, and Kates were startled. Kaneko, Akino, engage. Kayom, you observe for now. It's your first time dealing with a stray devil, Rias commanded. You can join in as well, Roy said to the other girls, waving his hand. After the incident with the alchemist's monster, Rias no longer refused his help. Watch my grow live. Alice giggled, releasing her Pokemon. Woof woof. Growlithe barked excitedly. Growlithe, use Ember. Alice commanded, pointing at the stray devil. Woof. Growlithe obeyed, unleashing a small burst of flames. However, it didn't harm the stray devil. This was understandable. The stray devil was at the peak of middle-class devil level. Growlithe was still too young, but that didn't dampen Alice's enthusiasm. With Kaneko and Akino holding the front line, there was no danger to her. Seeing Alice having so much fun, Makomo, Nezuko, and Asia also released their Pokemon. Go, Squirtle. Go, Vulpix. Go, Pikachu. Squirtle, use Water Gun. Squirtle. Vulpix, use Fire Spin. Vol. Pikachu, use Thunderbolt. Pika. Although their attacks didn't harm the stray devil, they served as a distraction. Chapter 75. The Church Girl Duo. What kind of familiars are those? Abe asked curiously, observing Alice and the others' Pokémon. Despite being from a family of magicians, she had never seen such creatures before. "This is Growlive. Isn't he cool?" Alice boasted. "He's certainly impressive," Kyome agreed. Just then, Akino finally decided to intervene. "Resound through the heaven, divine lightning," she declared, unleashing a bolt of golden lightning that struck the stray devil, leaving it charred and smoking. Era, it seems that's the end of that," Akino said with a hint of disappointment. She hadn't expected the stray devil to be so easily defeated. "Now that the mission is complete, let's head back," Rias announced. Roy nodded in agreement. It was time to return. Shizuka and the others would be waiting. Suddenly, they heard footsteps approaching. Two figures appeared at the warehouse entrance. "We smelled a foul stench from afar." "So it's devils," one of the figures declared. "What a mess you devils have made," the other added with a sneer. The two girls, one with short blue hair and the other with brown pigtails, wore white church robes. Roy instantly recognized them as the church duo, Zenobia and Irina Shidu. He hadn't expected to encounter them here. "You two must be members of the church. What brings you to devil territory?" Rias asked, surprised by their appearance. "We have some matters to discuss with you devils," Zenobia replied, crossing her arms with an arrogant air. "This isn't a suitable place for a discussion. Why don't we return to a more appropriate setting?" Roy suggested with a sly smile, amused by their arrogance. Zenobia and Irina didn't object. Roy opened a teleportation circle, and they all returned to his castle. In the conference room, the two groups sat facing each other. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting," Zenobia began. "I am Zenobia. And I am Irina Shidu." They introduced themselves. "So, what is it that you wish to discuss?" Rias asked, her arms crossed. Irina got straight to the point. Excluding the one that was lost, the remaining 6 Excalibur swords were kept by the 3 factions of the church. However, 3 of them were stolen by the fallen angels. Stolen? Rias and Akino were surprised. Roy chuckled inwardly. They have the nerve to admit they were robbed? "We currently only possess the Excalibur Destruction End." Zenobia trailed off, looking at Irina. Irina puffed out her chest proudly. "And the Excalibur Mimic, which I wield." Roy was speechless. They had just revealed their trump cards without any prompting. If they encountered any malicious individuals, they might be sold off before they even realized it. "So, what do you want us to do?" Rias asked. "This is a matter between us and the fallen angels. Any unnecessary interference from devils will only complicate things," Zenobia declared. Her words were clearly a threat, warning Rias not to get involved. Roy couldn't help but laugh. These two newbies, with their middle-class devil strength, were threatening Rias on her own territory. Could it get any more ridiculous? "What are you laughing at?" Irina glared at Roy. "I just remembered something amusing," Roy replied, stifling his laughter. "What's so amusing?" Irina seemed intrigued. "Yesterday, I saw a calf trying to fight a lion." "Ha ha ha ha. Isn't that hilarious? A calf? A lion? What do you mean?" Siko, and the others, however, understood Roy's meaning and chuckled. "Idiot." Zenobia and Irina huffed, turning away. "Are you suggesting that we would collude with the fallen angels to steal the Excalibur swords?" Rias asked, her voice still calm, but her eyes flashed with anger. "For devils, the Excalibur swords are forbidden objects. It's not impossible for you to join forces with the fallen angels," Zenobia replied with a shrug. Rias could no longer contain her anger. Her aura flared. But the two clueless girls remained oblivious. "If that were the case, I would eliminate you all, even if you are the Satan's sister," Zenobia declared confidently. Roy burst into laughter, unable to hold it back any longer. Zenovia's words were very stupid. Anyone else would have retaliated against such a threat, even if they didn't kill them outright. They were making enemies and seemed proud of it. Zenobia and Irina glared at him. "You're laughing at us, aren't you? You've been laughing at us this whole time," Irina exclaimed, slamming her hands on the table. "Ha ha ha ha, you're just realizing that now? You two are really clueless," Roy mocked. "You come to my territory, make threats, and claim you'll eliminate us? Who gave you this confidence? Those two Excalibur swords? You're hilarious." Zenobia and Irina were enraged. They reached for their swords, ready to attack. "You must be the one who defeated Riser Phoenix recently. Don't underestimate us. I'll show you the power of the Excalibur," Irina declared. "Oh? I'd love to teach you some manners," Roy replied with a smirk. He snapped his fingers. "Seiko." "Yes." Seiko stepped forward with a smile and approached Zenobia and Irina. "Please, follow me to the training room." "Humph. Fine." Irina huffed, and the two girls followed Seiko. They weren't afraid of the Satan's sister, so they certainly weren't afraid of Roy. They arrived at the spacious training room within the castle. "Seiko, Kaneo, you'll be their opponents," Roy instructed. Zenobia and Irina were only middle-class devils, but with the Excalibur swords, they could even fight those at the peak of that level. However, Seiko and Kaneo weren't normal middle-class devils. They were more than enough to handle the two girls. "Let's begin." Zenobia and Irina dramatically threw off their church robes. The church wouldn't be happy about this. "Please allow me to enjoy myself, as long as we don't kill each other." With those words, they unleashed the power of their Excalibur swords. "I'll make sure you enjoy yourself," Seiko replied with a sly smile, her fighting spirit burning. Kaneo simply observed them silently. The battle began. Seiko faced Zenobia, while Kaneo faced Irina. Clang! 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 Clash! 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 The battle was fierce from the start. Zenobia wielded the Excalibur Destruction. Her every strike was powerful and destructive. However, she was at a disadvantage against Seiko's incredible speed. Seiko effortlessly evaded every attack. Meanwhile, Kaneo's fight against Irina was one-sided. Kaneo didn't play around like Seiko. She fought with her full strength, aiming for a swift victory. This was what Shinobu had taught her during her Demon Slayer training. Flower breathing, fourth form, Crimson Hanagoromo. Kaneo unleashed a two-step slash, arcing upwards. "So fast!" Irina exclaimed, struggling to defend against Kaneo's relentless assault. "Damn it, why is she so strong? She's even younger than me." Kaneo possessed exceptional eyesight. By observing her opponent's subtle movements, their shoulders, gaze, fingertips, elbows, knees, she could predict their next move. Irina, a novice in comparison, was no match for her. Within moments, Kaneo's blade was at Irina's neck. Irina froze, drenched in cold sweat. Seiko, seeing that Kaneo had already defeated her opponent, decided to end her own fight as well. Thunder breathing, second form, Rice Spirit. With a flash of lightning, Seiko appeared before Zenobia. She unleashed 5 lightning-fast strikes, her movements too quick for the eye to follow. "What?" Zenobia gasped, shocked by Seiko's sudden appearance. Clang! 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 5 resounding clashes echoed through the training room as Zenobia was sent flying, her Excalibur Destruction flung from her grasp. "You lose," Seiko declared, her sword pointed at the fallen Zenobia, her face flushed with exertion. Her 5 strikes had only hit the Excalibur Destruction. Otherwise, Zenobia would have been killed. "We lost," Zenobia admitted, defeated. She and Irina had been too arrogant. However, "We must carry out our mission to destroy the Excalibur swords, no matter what," Zenobia declared, her resolve unwavering. They prepared to leave. Before departing, Zenobia glanced at Asia, seemingly wanting to say something. But she remained silent. Wait, who is this fallen angel who stole the Excalibur swords? Rias asked, wanting to know their enemy's identity. It's the fallen angel Cadre, Kokobile, Irina replied. You too, trying to face a fallen angel Cadre? Roy scoffed. Are you suicidal? In his eyes, Zenobia and Irina were completely outmatched against Kokobile. Kokobile was a powerful fallen angel who had survived the war between devils, angels, and fallen angels. We're prepared to die if it means destroying the Excalibur swords, Irina said with a determined smile. With that, the two girls left. Roy didn't try to stop them. He knew Kokobile's objective was to instigate a war between angels, fallen angels, and devils. He would undoubtedly target Rias, Sona, and perhaps even Roy himself. As for Zenobia and Irina, they were merely pawns sent by the church to their deaths. He would let them suffer a bit first. It would make it easier for Rias to recruit them later. Yes, Roy intended for those two to become part of Rias's peerage. And what belonged to Rias also belonged to him. But first, he needed to become stronger. Of course, Kokobile himself wasn't a major threat. However, the Chaos Brigade would likely get involved, creating unpredictable variables. He had to increase his strength. Back in his room, Roy checked the system interface. The world travel function had refreshed, presenting him with 3 new worlds. The first world, Attack on Titan. This was a world ruled by Titans. Although powerful compared to ordinary humans, the strongest Titans were only equivalent to middle-class devils. This world held little value for Roy. Perhaps Mikasa Ackerman could be a potential servant, but that wasn't his priority right now. The second world, Rascal does not dream of Bunny Girl Senpai. Another slice-of-life world. But who could resist my Sakurajima? Perhaps, when he had time, he could indulge his inner desires and bring my back with him. The third world, Akane Ga Kill. Roy's eyes lit up. It seemed he had found his queen. Isteth, the beautiful and sadistic general, was ruthless towards her enemies but incredibly caring towards her subordinates. She was a true queen, but when it came to love, she was surprisingly gentle and affectionate. Her power was terrifying. In the original story, it was mentioned that defeating her would require an army of over 50,000 soldiers and more than 10 Taigu users, including Akame. But in reality, she was even stronger than that. Isteth had single-handedly fought against millions of soldiers and over a dozen Taigu users, showcasing her overwhelming power. In Roy's estimation, she was at least a high-class devil. Ultimate-class devils could destroy cities, and Isteth didn't seem to be at that level yet. However, she possessed a powerful trump card, Mahapadma, which could freeze time and space. Even an ultimate-class devil couldn't underestimate her. I must conquer Isteth and make her my queen, Roy decided. But due to the dark, violent, and bloody nature of that world, he would only take Siko with him. The other girls were too pure and innocent. He didn't want to expose them to such darkness. Roy summoned Siko to his room, and they vanished together. Chapter 76, Roy gets to pet Akame. The world of Akane Ga Kill. The imperial capital, a city steeped in 1,000 years of history, was rotting from within. Its apparent prosperity masked a corrupt and hellish reality, a den of vipers and demons in human form. This was a dark world, where the assassin group Night Raid fought against the Empire's tyranny. Night Raid Headquarters. Najenda, the leader of Night Raid, had gathered all the members in the meeting room. Settle down, everyone. I'd like to introduce you to some new members, she announced with a smile. The door opened, and a young man and 2 girls entered. The young man, around 16 or 17 years old, had short silver hair and strikingly handsome features. His golden eyes shone with an unusual brilliance, and he carried himself with an air of elegance and nobility. He was quite the dashing young fellow. The Night Raid members were captivated by his presence. The girl beside him was equally striking. She had long purple hair that reached her waist, delicate and beautiful features, and a tall, slender figure. She held a long sword in her hand. Her attire reminded the others of Akame, and they couldn't help but glance at her. The last one had long pink hair, wore headphones, and had a lollipop in her mouth. She had a curvy figure and exuded a cheerful aura. "This is Roy, this is Siko, and this is Chelsea," Najenda introduced them. They'd been sent from above to join Night Raid. "It's a pleasure to meet you all," Roy said with a slight smile, his eyes twinkling with amusement. He and Siko had arrived in this world yesterday. However, they had materialized in a northern town. Roy's first objective was to join Night Raid. After all, he intended to make some of the girls in Night Raid his servants. He and Siko had sought out the Revolutionary Army headquarters and used magic to control the leader. As a devil, Roy had access to various mind control spells. Normal humans were no match for his magic. Roy then instructed the Revolutionary Army leader to arrange for him and Siko to join Night Raid. He also had Chelsea reassigned to their team. Along the way, Roy and Siko had gotten to know Chelsea. "It's a pleasure to meet you all," Siko and Chelsea echoed Roy's greeting. "Up close, Akame is even cuter," Chelsea exclaimed, approaching Akame with interest. She playfully twirled Akame's hair and patted her head. Akame blushed at her bold actions. "What are you doing?" she mumbled, flustered. Akame had long black hair that reached her hips, crimson eyes, an unyielding gaze, and beautiful features. Despite her love for food, she had a slender figure. She was an adorable girl who often used the phrase eliminate during battles. "I'm Chelsea." "Let's get along, fellow assassin," Chelsea said with a grin. Joining a new team, it was natural to try to fit in quickly. Chelsea had chosen Akame as her target. During their time in the Revolutionary Army, Akame was the only one who had completed a similar number of missions as Chelsea. She had some understanding of Akame's personality. "Here, this is for you." Chelsea offered Akame a lollipop with a playful smile. Akame's eyes lit up at the sight of the lollipop. She snatched it eagerly. "Welcome to Night Raid." Mine and Leon chuckled, amused by how easily Akame had been won over. "Ha, since we're comrades now, I can't be stingy either," Roy said with a laugh. He held out his hand, and a blue magic circle appeared in midair. He reached into the magic circle and pulled out a platter of roasted chicken. The Night Raid members were stunned by this magical display. This was storage magic, a technique Roy had recently learned. It was similar to a spatial ring, allowing him to store items. Roy had stored quite a few goodies inside. "Akame, this is for you," Roy said, offering her the roasted chicken. The golden, crispy chicken emitted an enticing aroma. Akame couldn't resist. She snatched the chicken, her speed leaving an afterimage. "Welcome to Night Raid, Roy," she exclaimed, clearly prioritizing the meat over Chelsea's lollipop. Akame was a true carnivore. Damn it! They've completely figured out Akame's weakness. Lubbock grumbled. Lubbock was a young man with green hair who wielded the Taigu crosstail. Don't worry, I have something for you all too," Roy reassured them, pulling out more gifts from the magic circle. "Mine, this is for you." He handed her a beautifully packaged bottle of milk. "Mine was at Sundara girl with pink pigtails who wielded the Taigu pumpkin." "What's this?" Mine asked curiously, intrigued by the exquisite packaging. "It's delicious milk." "Drink it, and you'll grow up quickly," Roy said with a smile, patting Mine's head. Mine's face darkened. She looked down at her flat chest, clearly misunderstanding his words. "You jerk! Explain what you mean by grow up quickly," she shouted, pointing at Roy accusingly. Mine, don't misunderstand. "If you don't like it, I can exchange it for something else," Roy said, reaching for the milk. Mine quickly hid the bottle behind her back. "Humph! You can't take back a gift once you've given it," she retorted. She had already been tempted by the sweet smell of the milk and wasn't about to give it back. "I'm glad you like it," Roy chuckled. Another tsundere with pink pigtails, he thought, amused. Just like Saya, he had a soft spot for this personality type. Roy then gave everyone a gift, even Najenda. There's something for me too? Chelsea asked in surprise, looking at the gift Roy offered, then at him. This guy was even more prepared than her. She had only planned to win over Akame to quickly integrate into the team. But Roy had considered everyone. This person is not simple, she thought. Roy smiled as everyone happily accepted his gifts. They were mostly snacks, drinks, and small toys. Nothing too expensive, so the night raid members readily accepted them. It seemed his first step towards his goal was a success. Roy wanted the girls of Night Raid to become his servants, but he wouldn't force them. To make them willingly join his peerage, he had to go through trials and tribulations with them. Only then would they truly acknowledge him and accept his offer. And the first step was to build a good relationship with them. Roy, judging by how you took those things out of thin air, do you possess a spatial type Taigu? Najenda asked, voicing the question everyone was curious about. Something like that, Roy replied with a smile. But it can only store items. That's still amazing. Leon exclaimed. Actually, I specialize in swordsmanship, Roy said, patting the sword at his waist. Oh? In that case, you'll be partnered with Akame for now, Najenda decided. She then looked at Siko and Chelsea. Siko, you'll be partnered with Shiel. Chelsea, I believe you're no stranger to assassination missions. But Chelsea doesn't seem like an assassin, Lubbock commented skeptically. Don't judge a book by its cover, Lubbock. Chelsea has completed a similar number of missions as Akame. She's quite skilled, Najenda explained. The Night Raid members were surprised. Chelsea puffed out her chest proudly, enjoying the praise. Others might not know, but Roy was aware of Chelsea's abilities. Her Taigu was Gia Foundation, a cosmetic-type Taigu. However, it was more like a transformation tool than just makeup. Using her Taigu, Chelsea could completely change her appearance, including her height, build, voice, and even her movements. Unless someone knew her very well, it was impossible to see through her disguise. In the original story, Chelsea had used this Taigu to infiltrate enemy territory, disguising herself as someone they trusted. Then, she would deliver a fatal blow when they least expected it. Her track record was impressive. Unfortunately, she had met a tragic end, beheaded by Kuron, her head displayed on a flagpole. Roy glanced at Chelsea with a strange expression. Chelsea, noticing his gaze, looked at him curiously. Roy simply smiled without saying anything. All right, everyone, get to know each other. We'll assign missions tomorrow, Najenda announced before leaving. Roy and Akame were partnered for their first mission. Their first task was to prepare lunch for the Night Raid headquarters. Fortunately, Roy was a decent cook. With the seasonings he had brought from the Highschool DxD world and his unique cooking methods, he prepared a feast that left everyone wanting more. Akame, the resident glutton, was especially impressed with Roy's culinary skills. In the afternoon, Akame took him to a river to catch fish. Standing by a waterfall, Akame started to undress without a word. Wait, Akame, are you going to catch fish? Roy asked, stopping her. Yes, Akame replied with a nod. Then leave the fishing to me. Roy puffed out his chest, ready to show off his skills. He extended his hand towards the river. A blue magic hand emerged from his palm and plunged into the water. When he withdrew his hand, it was filled with dozens of tuna. Roy then stored the fish in his storage magic. Akame was stunned by this effortless fishing method. Amazing, she exclaimed, her eyes filled with admiration. Ha ha, it's nothing, Roy replied with a wave of his hand. Now, it's time for meat. Akame declared, leading Roy into the forest. They had caught fish. Now, it was time to hunt for meat. Dangerous beasts often roamed this forest. Soon, they encountered a giant boar, 5 to 6 meters tall. Judging by its size, it was at least a Class 2 danger beast. It stood before them like a small hill. Be careful. I'm going in. Akame warned Roy before charging towards the boar. She couldn't use her Taigu, Murasame, for hunting, as it was cursed with a deadly poison. Akame drew a short sword and leaped onto the boar's back, slashing at its neck. Thwack! Blood splattered. A long gash appeared on the boar's neck. However, such a wound was insignificant to the massive creature. It ignored Akame and charged forward. "Roy, get out of the way!" Akame shouted urgently. The boar was charging straight towards Roy, who had been standing still. Boom! The boar crashed into the spot where Roy had been standing. Dust and debris filled the air. "Roy!" Akame cried out, her eyes wide with disbelief. She couldn't believe that Roy, her new comrade, had just been killed. Tears streamed down her face. "Akame, why are you crying?" The dust settled, revealing an unbelievable sight. The giant boar lay dead on the ground, and Roy stood unharmed. Roy had intended to show off a bit, but he hadn't expected Akame to cry. He quickly reassured her. "Akame, don't cry. See, I'm fine. Not a scratch." Roy patted his chest to emphasize his lack of injuries. However, Akame didn't believe him. She started checking him for injuries, her expression serious. Roy could only let her do as she pleased. After a thorough examination, Akame finally relaxed, her face flushed. Relieved that Roy was unharmed, she was embarrassed by her bold actions. "Don't be so reckless next time. You could have died," she scolded. Roy listened obediently. "There's nothing in this world that can kill me," he thought with amusement. He then took out a plate of Peking duck from his storage magic. Akame's eyes lit up at the sight of the delicious dish, her scolding forgotten. Roy chuckled and handed her the Peking duck. Akame accepted it without hesitation and started eating. This tactic is quite effective, Roy thought. He took the opportunity to pat Akame's head while she was distracted by the food. Akame didn't seem to mind his touch and continued eating. Roy grew bolder, petting Akame like a cat. Her long, smooth hair felt nice to the touch. Once Akame finished eating, Roy stored the boar's carcass in his storage magic. They returned to the night raid headquarters. When Roy retrieved the boar, Leon, Mine, Shiel, and the others gathered around. "Wow, Akame, well done. You hunted such a huge danger beast today," Mine praised, patting Akame's shoulder. "No, I didn't kill it," Akame replied, shaking her head. "Eh? If not you, then who?" Mine asked in surprise. "Roy killed it," Akame said, pointing at him. "What?" The night raid members were stunned. No one doubted Akame's words. "Ha, it seems our new member is quite strong," Leon exclaimed with a hearty laugh. She approached Roy and slung an arm around his neck. "Well done. Leon-san will protect you from now on." Roy couldn't resist the enthusiastic hug from the big sisterly Leon. Leon had beautiful blonde hair and golden eyes. She was a cheerful and busty woman. Her taiga was Lionel, which transformed her into a blonde, beast-eared, and even bustier warrior. Chapter 77, Big Sister Leon. The next day, Roy continued to work alongside Akame, their partnership proving to be quite effective. As night fell, Najenda summoned them both. "There's been a report of a sadistic noble family in the imperial capital," she began, her voice serious. "They lure in travelers with false promises of hospitality, then subject them to horrific torture for their own amusement. Leon has investigated and confirmed the report. Your mission is to eliminate this family." Roy felt a sense of familiarity. Luring travelers and torturing them? Wasn't this the mission Night Raid undertook in the beginning of the story? However, there was a slight difference. This time, it was just the two of them. But then again, the targets were just ordinary humans. It didn't require the entire Night Raid team to handle them. "Understood, boss." Akame acknowledged the mission. "Roy, this is your first mission, so Akame, please look after him," Najenda instructed. "Yes, boss." Akame nodded, glancing at Roy. With the mission accepted, they set off under the cover of night. The moon hung high in the sky as Roy and Akame arrived at the mansion of the sadistic noble family. The mansion was brightly lit, with figures moving about and guards patrolling the grounds. "Let the mission commence," Be careful, Akame reminded him, her expression serious and focused, a stark contrast to her usual carefree demeanor. Understood, Roy replied with a smile. Akame vanished into the shadows. They had planned their approach on the way here. They would infiltrate the mansion from both sides, ensuring no one escaped. As Akame disappeared, Roy stretched casually and walked towards the main entrance. He had no intention of hiding. Who's there? The guards at the gate noticed Roy approaching and challenged him. Roy remained silent, continuing his advance. Halt! Or we'll shoot! The guards raised their weapons, aiming at him. Bang! 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 Seeing that Roy still didn't respond, they opened fire. Roy drew his sword and effortlessly deflected the bullets. In a flash, he appeared before the guards and swung his blade. Thwack! Heads flew, blood spraying like a fountain. With one hand in his pocket and the other holding his sword, Roy stepped over the headless bodies without a change in his expression. The lights in the mansion flickered on, alerted to the commotion. A wave of guards charged towards him, shouting and brandishing their weapons. Roy smirked. Ice breathing, first form, flocking ice blades. He swung his sword, unleashing a barrage of ice projectiles that flew towards the guards like a flock of birds. Cack! The guards panicked, turning to flee. But it was too late. The ice projectiles pierced their bodies. Thud! 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 The sound of ice-piercing flesh filled the air. Dozens of guards were instantly killed, leaving a bloody scene. Roy continued his advance without pause. Inside the mansion, Arya, the young noblewoman, and her parents witnessed the carnage, their faces pale with terror. They screamed and fled towards the back door. However, another Grim Reaper awaited them there. Akame intercepted Arya's parents. Eliminate, she declared coldly, swiftly ending their lives. Yo, Akame, are you done? Roy called out, having caught up to her. Akame glanced at the dead nobles and frowned. There should be one more, the young noblewoman. She must have run that way, Roy said, pointing towards a lone warehouse in the distance. They had come from opposite directions. If anyone tried to escape, they would naturally run towards either side. Let's finish this, Akame said, heading towards the warehouse. Roy followed closely behind. They were incredibly fast. They caught up to Arya and her remaining guards before they could reach the warehouse. Eliminate! Akame declared, swiftly cutting down the guards. Roy appeared before Arya, blocking her path. Arya stumbled and fell, her eyes wide with fear. Please don't kill me. I'll give you anything you want. She pleaded. Unfortunately, you don't have the right to beg for mercy after what you've done, Roy said coldly. Thwack! Blood splattered as Arya's head rolled on the ground. Roy had executed her without hesitation. Well done. You didn't hesitate even when facing such a cute girl, Akame commented with a rare smile. If Roy didn't know her better, he would have thought she was mocking him. She wasn't cute at all. Just a devil in human form, Roy retorted. Indeed, Akame agreed with a nod. This warehouse must be where they tortured their victims, Roy said, observing the building. It looked similar to the one in the original story. He approached the warehouse and sliced open the door with his sword. They entered. The scene inside was like a gruesome depiction of hell. People were bound, suspended, and subjected to horrific torture. The stench of blood and decay filled the air, making Roy nauseous. He knew this world was dark and cruel, but he had underestimated its depravity. Akame, however, remained unfazed by the horrific scene. Her eyes were calm, but a hint of killing intent flickered within them. Roy didn't want to stay here a moment longer. But as he turned to leave, a voice called out from a cage deep within the warehouse. Let us out. The rattling of chains echoed through the room. Roy turned back and saw a young man and woman bound by chains inside the cage. There are still survivors? Roy hadn't expected anyone to be alive in this hellish place. He approached the cage, effortlessly cutting through the bars and the chains that bound the two captives. "Come out," he said, then turned to leave. He couldn't stand to be in this place any longer. "You must have been tricked by that noblewoman," Akane said to the two survivors. They looked weak but hadn't been tortured yet. It seemed they had just been captured. "Yes," the young man replied, his voice filled with fear. "We thought they were kind enough to offer us shelter, but after dinner, we lost consciousness and woke up here." The horrors within the warehouse filled him with terror. If they hadn't been rescued, their fate would have been unimaginable. "You mean her?" Roy pointed at Aria's corpse. The young man's eyes widened in horror. "Yes, that's her. They lure travelers with false promises, then torture them to death for their own amusement," Akame explained. "That's the true nature of this family. You're lucky to be alive." Roy recognized the two survivors. They were Ayasu and Seo, Tatsumi's friends from the original story. He hadn't expected to encounter them here. It seemed they had just been captured and hadn't been subjected to any torture yet. They were indeed fortunate. "Take this money and return to your village. The imperial capital isn't a place for you," Roy said, tossing them a bag of coins. He then turned to leave. Mission accomplished. "Let's go," he said to Akame, and they vanished. "Thank you for saving us," Ayasu called out, watching them disappear. He picked up the bag of coins and helped Seo to her feet. He decided that once they found Tatsumi, they would leave the imperial capital, this monstrous city that devoured people. Back at Night Raid headquarters, Najenda praised them for completing their mission. "Well done on your first mission, newbie," Leon exclaimed, slinging an arm around Roy's neck and giving him a thumbs up. Roy, momentarily blinded by her cleavage, could only endure the warm embrace. "Roy, you'll be partnered with Leon next," Najenda announced with a smile. "Ha ha. I'll take good care of you, kid," Leon declared, beaming. Only Akame seemed disappointed by this arrangement. "Leon, report on your mission," Najenda instructed, folding her arms. "Yes." Leon's playful demeanor vanished as she turned to business. She released Roy and presented two portraits. "Our targets are Ogre from the Imperial Guard and the oil merchant, Gamal. According to the client, Ogre has accepted numerous bribes from Gamal. Whenever Gamal commits a crime, Ogre finds scapegoats for him. Many innocent people have been imprisoned because of them. Have you confirmed the information?" Najenda asked, lighting a cigarette. "I've seen and heard it with my own eyes and ears." "It's definitely true," Leon affirmed. "All right, we'll accept this request," Najenda decided. "We'll punish these criminals. Although eliminating Gamal will be easy, dealing with Ogre won't be so simple," Leon continued. "When he's not on duty, he spends his time drinking in the entertainment district near the palace. Security is tight around there. It's too dangerous to send someone who's wanted." Leon, as the intelligence gatherer, was well versed in the capital's situation. "Then who should we send?" Najenda asked. "I?" Leon raised her hand. "I'm not wanted." "I don't think I'm wanted either," Roy said with a smile. "How about I take care of Ogre? Should we wait for mine and the others to return?" Akame suggested with concern. "But we don't know when they'll be back," Leon countered. Najenda extinguished her cigarette and looked at Roy. "Can you handle it?" Roy smirked confidently. "I have complete confidence." "Overconfidence can be fatal," Akame warned. "Don't worry, Akame. There's no one in this world who can kill me," Roy reassured her, patting her head. "Then it's decided. Roy will eliminate Ogre, and Akame and Leon will deal with Gamal." "No problem." "Yes." They accepted their missions without hesitation and set off immediately. In the entertainment district outside the Imperial Palace, Leon carefully explained the layout and the locations where Ogre could be found. "Got it?" she asked, patting Roy's shoulder. "Yes, don't worry," Roy assured her. "Then I'll leave it to you." Akame and I will handle the oil merchant, Leon said before running off. Roy sighed and strolled through the bustling streets. He, a Mauplace devil, was reduced to doing such trivial tasks. But Akame's affection for him seemed to be growing, and Leon also treated him differently. He was confident he could win over Shiel, who was about to meet her demise in the original story. Roy spent some time exploring the entertainment district until he finally found Ogre in a tavern, drinking with some companions. It wasn't a good time to strike. Although Roy could easily overpower them all, he wanted to maintain a low profile. After all, he was supposed to be an assassin. Roy decided to wait for a better opportunity. He entered the tavern, found a seat, and ordered some food and drinks. Meanwhile, Akame and Leon had infiltrated the oil merchant's mansion. Gamal was swiftly eliminated. That was easy. I wonder how Roy is doing, Leon said, stretching. Let's go check on him, Akame suggested. Eh? You're worried about that kid? Alright, let's go then, Leon teased, amused by Akame's concern. They headed towards the entertainment district. Since Akame was wanted, they couldn't get too close. They observed the area from a nearby rooftop. They saw Roy exiting the tavern. Roy's out. I wonder if he succeeded, Leon said, focusing her attention. Roy walked down the street casually. Just then, a group of Imperial guards approached him. Oh no, it's the Imperial Guard. Was Roy discovered? Leon frowned, worried. No, Akame said calmly. As if to confirm her words, the guards simply walked past Roy, not recognizing him. Chapter 78, Teaching Mine How to Use a Gun. Just then, Ogre, the captain of the Imperial Police, emerged from the tavern Roy had just exited. Good evening, Captain. Greetings, sir. Captain Ogre. The Imperial Police greeted their captain. Carry on with your patrol, Ogre instructed. Yes, sir. After a brief exchange, the guards continued their patrol, while Ogre walked towards Roy. Roy subtly adjusted his direction, walking towards Ogre as well. In the bustling street, amidst the flow of people, they passed each other. Roy, his back to Ogre, smirked and continued walking. Among the patrolling guards, Saria Ubiquitous, who was at the rear, saw a flash of light. She instinctively turned her head and saw her mentor, Ogre, suddenly freeze. Then, he collapsed to the ground, his head rolling off his shoulders. Sensei. Saria Ubiquitous trembled, her eyes wide with disbelief. The other guards, alerted by her reaction, also witnessed the gruesome scene. Captain Ogre has been assassinated. Seal off the area. Find the culprit. Don't let the assassin escape. I'll kill whoever murdered Sensei. Panic and chaos erupted in the entertainment district. Roy, however, had already left the area and was walking through a quiet alley. Hey, Roy. Well done. Not only did you take out Ogre, but you even fooled the Imperial Police, Leon praised, appearing beside him with Akame. That was a clean strike, Akame added, offering a rare compliment. Indeed, as Roy passed by Ogre, he had drawn and swung his sword in a swift, unseen motion. The attack was so fast that no one noticed until Ogre collapsed a few steps later. It was a perfect assassination. If Akame and Leon hadn't been observing closely, even they wouldn't have noticed. It was nothing, Roy said modestly. He was being praised for eliminating a weakling. Leon found his nonchalance a bit arrogant, but Roy was genuinely being humble. Back at Night Raid headquarters, Najenda commended Roy's performance. Well done, Roy. It seems you're getting into the swing of things, she said. Tomorrow, you'll be partnered with mine. No problem, Roy agreed. Boss is really going out of her way to help Roy integrate into the team, Leon commented, her arms crossed. But mine isn't the easiest person to get along with. Indeed, mine's tsundere personality could be quite challenging. However, once she acknowledged someone, she was incredibly loyal and supportive. Achoo! Mine, currently on a mission, sneezed. She felt like someone was talking about her. Early the next morning, Najenda gathered the night raid members. We have intruders near our base. According to Lubbock's barrier, there are 8 of them, she announced. They managed to find this place? Impressive. They must be skilled assassins, Leone commented, though she didn't seem too concerned. Deploy. Eliminate all hostiles, Najenda ordered decisively. Yes. The night raid members set out to search for the intruders. Roy and mine were partnered, as per Najenda's instructions. Honestly, why do I have to be partnered with the newbie? Mine grumbled as they searched the forest. She usually worked with Shiel, who would protect her, allowing her to focus on sniping enemies from afar. She wasn't happy about the sudden change in partners. Don't worry, mine. I won't let you get hurt, Roy reassured her with a smile. What are you talking about, idiot? Mine blushed at his words, which sounded almost like a confession. Just then, a figure emerged from the trees, charging towards mine. What? The sudden attack was incredibly fast. Even mine couldn't react in time. Just as the attacker was about to strike, Roy stepped in front of her, shielding her. Look out! Mine cried out. Don't worry, it's fine now, Roy said calmly, patting her head. Mine blinked, then looked behind Roy. Thwack! The attacker's head rolled on the ground. Mine felt a surge of gratitude and a sense of security. However, her tsundere nature wouldn't allow her to express her feelings directly. Humph, you barely passed, she huffed, swatting away Roy's hand. Roy chuckled at her tsundere act. They continued their search for the intruders. On a mountaintop, mine finally found her target. Humph, after that close call, I can unleash even greater power. This distance is perfect for sniping, she declared, spotting an enemy through the scope of her Taigu, pumpkin. She pulled the trigger. A golden beam of energy shot out. Boom! The target was instantly vaporized. Mine's Taigu, pumpkin, resembled a massive sniper rifle with incredible destructive power. Its power increased in proportion to the danger she faced. In the original story, Bud, the Grand General of the Empire, who was as strong as his death, had been killed by Mine's pumpkin. It was a terrifying weapon. Target eliminated. Mine declared, satisfied. Suddenly, another enemy emerged from a nearby tree, slashing at Roy. This time, the target wasn't mine. Just as the enemy's blade was about to strike Roy, a gun appeared at its head. Sayonara. Bang! Roy twirled the light gun in his hand, blowing away the smoke from the barrel. Is your Taigu also a gun? Mine asked, dumbfounded. When the enemy had appeared, she had expected Roy to draw his sword. But he had used a gun instead. Judging by the energy bullet it fired, Mine assumed it was a Taigu. This? It's just a toy. If you like it, I'll give it to you, Roy offered casually. Really? Mine couldn't believe he would give her such a valuable weapon so easily. Of course. Here. Roy handed her the light gun. Mine accepted it without hesitation. She examined the gun, her eyes sparkling with delight. Her pumpkin was powerful, but it was also cumbersome to use, especially in close combat. This light gun would be perfect for close-quarters situations. Here, Mine, let me teach you how to use it, Roy offered, demonstrating the gun's functions. Although Mine didn't have magic power, the light gun could also use ordinary bullets. And it could also use mental energy as ammunition, which was how Pumpkin operated. However, Pumpkin was troublesome to use. It was a modular weapon that required assembly, and she always had to carry a large case with her. If ambushed, she wouldn't have time to assemble it. The light gun was much more convenient. It was small, lightweight, and powerful. After Roy taught her how to use it, Mine loved the light gun even more. Thank you. I might even agree to do something for you if it's not too outrageous, Mine said with a tsundere blush, accepting the gift. If you could call me by my name, I'd be very happy, Roy replied with a smile. Mine had been calling him newbie and hadn't used his name yet, indicating she hadn't fully accepted him as a comrade. That's easy. Roy, Mine said without hesitation. As she uttered his name, the atmosphere shifted subtly. Their eyes met. Mine blushed, her cheeks burning. The mission is complete. Let's head back, she blurted out, unable to handle the sudden intimacy. She slung Pumpkin over her shoulder and practically fled. Roy chuckled, amused by her flustered reaction. The next day, Roy continued his partnership with Mine. Today's mission, assigned by Najenda, was to investigate the situation in the Imperial capital. Early in the morning, Roy knocked on Mine's door. Mine, are you awake? We have a mission to attend to. Wait a moment. I'll be right there, Mine's flustered voice came from inside the room. After a while, she finally emerged. She glared at Roy and let out a haughty humph. She had been changing clothes when she heard Roy's voice, startling her and causing a moment of panic. Roy shrugged, amused by her predictable reaction. They headed to the dining room for breakfast. Siko and Akane were partnered today. Siko's cooking, as always, was impeccable, earning praise from everyone. After breakfast, Roy and Mine set off for the Imperial capital. I'm a bit full, Mine said, patting her stomach contentedly. Now, let's begin our investigation of the capital, she declared with enthusiasm. Roy knew that her investigation mainly involved shopping. But she wouldn't neglect her duty to observe the situation in the capital. Hurry up and keep up. Mine called out. Coming. Roy chuckled, catching up to her. They walked side by side, looking like a young couple. Some of the comments from passers-by made Mine blush. They strolled through the streets like they were on a date, enjoying ice cream, shopping for clothes, and playing games. Mine's smile didn't fade throughout the morning, while Roy became the designated bag carrier. Fortunately, he had storage magic. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to carry everything. Perhaps only during these moments could Mine, a killer who walked in darkness, truly be herself. Roy felt a pang of sympathy for these girls. Gulp. Mine took a large sip of iced juice, a satisfied sigh escaping her lips. We bought so many clothes today. As expected, pink is the best color for spring, she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. So, did you enjoy our date today? Roy asked, also taking a sip of his juice. Of course I did, Mine replied without hesitation. Then, as if realizing what she had just said, she blushed furiously. Idiot. What date? We were investigating the capital, she shouted, jumping to her feet. Okay, I know. It wasn't a date. It was an investigation, Roy soothed her, chuckling at her outburst. Mine sat back down, took another sip of her juice, and fanned her face with her hand, trying to cool down her burning cheeks. But the memories of the day with Roy wouldn't fade so easily. They sat in silence for a while. When they finished their drinks, Mine stood up. All right, mission accomplished. Let's head back. Okay, Roy agreed with a smile. They returned to the night raid headquarters. That evening, Najenda assigned a new mission. Our target this time is Ayakal, a distant relative of Prime Minister Honest, she announced, her expression turning grim. He uses Prime Minister Honest's name to kidnap and torture women to death. The 5 Wild Hunt assassins guarding him are also guilty. This is an important mission. All members of Night Raid will participate. Yes. The mission wasn't particularly difficult. The Wild Hunt assassins were small fry. But since the other Night Raid members had no other assignments, Najenda decided to have them all participate. Soon, they were gathered outside Ayakal's mansion. Mine would be the first to strike, sniping Ayakal from afar. Once Ayakal was eliminated, the Wild Hunt assassins would undoubtedly come after them. The others would then intercept and eliminate the assassins. It was a simple plan. Mine had found the perfect sniping position on a hill overlooking the mansion. Roy stood beside her, acting as her bodyguard. Good luck, Mine. Humph. I'm a genius sniper. The moment he steps out of that mansion, he's dead. Mine took a deep breath and raised her taigu, pumpkin. She peered through the scope, her focus unwavering. Her concentration was absolute, as if nothing could distract her from her target. Chapter 79, A Day in the Life of Night Raid. They were positioned at least 5 kilometers away from Ayakel's mansion. Ordinary sniper rifles couldn't reach that distance. Even if they could, accuracy would be a major issue. This was a challenging sniping mission. The night raid members waited in silence. There he is. Mine spotted Ayakel through the scope of her taigu, pumpkin. She pulled the trigger without hesitation. Bang! The gunshot echoed through the night. Ayakel, inside the mansion, was instantly killed with a headshot. Excellent shot, Roy praised. Humph. Of course, Mine replied, puffing out her chest with a proud smirk. But the Wild Hunt assassins must have heard the gunshot. We should hide, Roy suggested. Mine nodded in agreement. They concealed themselves in a nearby tree. As expected, one of the Wild Hunt assassins soon arrived. Damn it, they escaped. How am I supposed to explain this? The assassin cursed, seeing no one around. No need to explain anything. Bang! A voice rang out from behind the assassin, and a bullet pierced his back. However, the assassin reacted with incredible agility, dodging the bullet. Even Mine was surprised. But she didn't stop. She fired again and again. Bang! 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 The assassin, however, dodged every shot with impressive reflexes. Just as he was about to close in on Mine, another gunshot rang out. A bullet forced the assassin back. Roy had fired the shot. He held a black light gun, smoke curling from its barrel. Mine stared at Roy in surprise. She looked at his black light gun, then at her own white one. The matching colors reminded her of couple items, and she blushed. Don't just stand there. Take him down, Roy urged. Mine snapped out of her daze. They both opened fire on the assassin, turning him into a target practice dummy. Roy wasn't serious, of course. He was just playing a shooting game with Mine. The assassin, unable to approach them under their relentless barrage, jumped and dodged frantically. Soon, he was riddled with bullets. Target eliminated. Mission accomplished. Mine declared, twirling her light gun and holstering it, imitating Roy's earlier actions. Let's head back then, Roy said with a smile. They regrouped with Akame and the others and returned to the night raid headquarters. Life as an assassin wasn't all about missions. For the next few days, they all took a break. Early one morning, Roy saw Bullet, shirtless and drenched in sweat, training in the courtyard. Yo, Roy! Want to join me for a workout? Bullet greeted him with a cheerful grin. No, thanks. I have something to do, Roy declined awkwardly. Bullet was known for his tendencies, and Roy wasn't interested in getting too close to him. Roy, it's time to prepare breakfast, Akame said, approaching him. Oh, okay. Let's go then, Roy replied with a smile. Although Akame was partnered with Siko, she often sought out Roy to cook together. This wasn't because Roy was a better cook than Siko. It was because she craved the delicious food he stored in his spatial magic. Siko, come join us for breakfast preparations, Roy invited, seeing her approach. Sure, Siko agreed with a smile. Soon, a delicious breakfast was ready. Are Mine and Shiel still asleep? Roy asked, noticing their empty seats. It's not unusual, Akame replied casually. As assassins, they often fought at night, so it was normal for them to sleep in. But they hadn't had any missions yesterday, had they? I'll go wake them up. You guys start eating, Roy offered, getting up to rouse the two sleepyheads. He knocked on Shiel's door. Hey, Shiel, wake up. Breakfast is ready. Mum. A faint groan was the only response. Roy, with his enhanced hearing as a devil, could barely make out the sound. He opened the door. Sheil, clad in a loose-fitting nightgown, lay fast asleep, her curvaceous figure outlined beneath the thin fabric. Sheil, wake up, Roy said, gently shaking her shoulder. Is that Roy? Sheil mumbled, her eyes fluttering open. However, she seemed disoriented, her gaze directed at the wall. Roy sighed inwardly. Nearsighted and airhead, what a combination, he thought with amusement. My glasses, where are my glasses? Sheil sat up, fumbling around blindly. Here. Roy picked up her glasses from the nightstand and handed them to her. Thank you, Sheil said gratefully, putting on her glasses, oblivious to the fact that her nightgown had shifted, revealing more than she intended. Roy helped her adjust her clothes. Sheil, get up. Breakfast is ready. I'll go wake up mine now. Okay, Sheil replied with a dazed nod. Roy then went to Mine's room and knocked. Mine, wake up. It's time for breakfast. Knock, knock, knock. Let me sleep a bit longer. Zzz. Mine's muffled voice came from inside. Roy sighed and opened the door. Seeing Mine sprawled across the bed, he couldn't resist teasing her. He gently pulled her cheeks. Mine, wake up. Ow. Mine woke up with a yelp, her cheeks stinging. Roy, you idiot. She glared at him and instinctively bit his arm. Ha, you missed. Roy quickly pulled his arm away with a playful grin. I'll bite you to death. Mine growled. You should get dressed first. I'll be waiting in the dining room, Roy said, glancing at Mine's exposed figure, then quickly left the room. Mine looked down and realized her nightgown had ridden up, exposing her. Her face flushed crimson, and she let out a scream. She wanted to blast Roy with pumpkin, but he had already escaped. After a while, Sheil and Mine finally arrived at the dining room, fully dressed. Mine glared at Roy, but there was nothing she could do. I want milk, she declared, slamming her hand on the table. She couldn't fight him, so she demanded milk as compensation. Roy was surprised by her request but readily agreed. He had plenty of milk. Here you go. He placed a small bottle of milk on the table before her. Humph. Mine turned away, taking the milk and drinking it. Everyone stared at Roy expectantly. This is for Akame, Roy said, realizing he had inadvertently triggered a chain reaction. He quickly gave everyone a bottle of milk. Roy is being awfully nice to Mine. Does he have a thing for her? Chelsea teased, taking a sip of her milk. What are you talking about? Mine retorted, her face flushed. It's true, Chelsea shrugged. Humph. If anything, he's nicer to Akame, Mine countered. Everyone thought about it and realized she was right. Roy always gave Akame whatever food she requested. Akame, who had been enjoying her breakfast, paused, her cheeks reddening slightly. She quickly resumed eating. Ahem, it's only natural to be nice to everyone, Roy explained awkwardly. He then swiftly snatched the lollipop from Chelsea's mouth. Too much candy will rot your teeth, he said, popping the lollipop into his mouth and biting it. Chelsea was stunned, then blushed. Ha, well done, Roy. Are you planning to build a harem? Leon laughed, slapping Roy's shoulder. Roy's lips twitched. Leon, although that is my plan, you don't have to announce it to everyone. He thought, exasperated. Don't worry, Leon. I won't forget about you either, Roy said, gritting his teeth playfully. Even Leon, with her bold personality, was taken aback. But then, her smile vanished. If we can all survive until the end, perhaps I'll agree, she said quietly. Her words brought a somber silence over the room. They were assassins, living a dangerous life. They could die at any moment. Romance seemed like a distant dream. Roy sighed. Leon, you really know how to kill the mood. He stood up and clapped his hands. Don't worry, everyone. As long as I'm here, no one will die. I promise. His confidence seemed to reassure them. Bullet also stood up. Well said. No one will die. Humph. Such arrogance. But I won't die so easily either. Mine declared with a tsundere huff. The atmosphere lightened up again. Ouch. Roy, you hit me quite hard, Leon complained, rubbing her shoulder. Humph. Serves you right for ruining the mood, Mine said with a smug grin. After breakfast, they gathered in the courtyard. Siko had challenged Akame to a spar, and Akame had accepted. They were both skilled swordswomen with similar fighting styles. Everyone knew how strong Akame was, but they were curious about Siko's true strength. They were all interested in this match, even Najenda. Akame, please. Likewise. Siko initiated the duel. Thunder breathing, first form, thunderclap and flash eightfold. Siko went all out from the start. She could sense Akame's strength. Akame was a high class. However, since this was a spar, they were using wooden swords. Without her taigu, Akame's strength was significantly reduced. Siko, on the other hand, had no weapon restrictions. But she was only at the peak of middle-class devil. Their strength was roughly equal in this situation. Siko's form blurred with lightning, and she appeared before Akame in an instant. Clash. 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 Their movements were incredibly fast. The intense and evenly matched battle thrilled the Night Raid members. Go, Akame. Go, Siko-san. Siko-san is so strong. Yeah, Akame has always been our ace, but Siko-san is just as powerful. But Akame is at a disadvantage without her taigu. Is that lightning Siko-san's taigu? The Night Raid members discussed the match excitedly. Both girls were exceptionally talented. Although Akame couldn't use her taigu, her years of experience in life-or-death battles gave her an edge. However, Siko had the advantage of speed and the versatility of thunder breathing. Taiga users, on the other hand, relied heavily on their taigu for their special abilities. Akame struggled to keep up with Siko's diverse techniques. Thunder breathing, first form, thunderclap and flash, Godspeed. This technique drastically increased Siko's speed and attack power. A flash of lightning, and Siko appeared behind Akame. Akame's wooden sword was cleanly sliced in two. I lost, Akame admitted, turning to face Siko. Akame, you couldn't use your taigu. I had the advantage. If you had used your taigu, I might not have won, Siko said modestly. Before mastering the one-cut killer, Murasame, Akame's strength was only at the early stage of high-class devil. But Siko also had a trump card, the Demon Slayer mark. Activating the mark would significantly enhance her physical abilities, allowing her to bridge the gap in strength. She could even fight a high-class devil with the mark activated. In the end, their strength was roughly equal. Clap, clap, clap. That was an amazing fight. Najenda praised, clapping her hands. It's reassuring to have a comrade like Siko-san. Unlike someone. Mine glanced at Roy with a hint of disdain. Roy is very strong. Akame defended him. Yes, Roy is far stronger than me, Siko added. The Night Raid members looked at Roy in disbelief. Ahem, keep it down, keep it down. Just know that as long as I'm here, no one will die, Roy assured them with a wave of his hand. That would be ideal, Najenda agreed. Humph. Such arrogance. Mine scoffed, though she couldn't help but feel reassured by his words. Chelsea and the others were curious about Roy. He was incredibly powerful, yet they had never heard of him before. Chapter 80, Leon Tale. That night, in the meeting room of Night Raid's headquarters, Najenda issued another mission. Our target this time is the serial killer who has been the talk of the Imperial capital, she announced. He's known as Zanku the Beheader, a nighttime prowler who specializes in decapitations. He was once the executioner at the capital's largest prison, but due to the Empire's tyranny and the countless executions he carried out, he went mad. Now, he roams the capital, killing indiscriminately. Najenda looked at the Night Raid members. Your mission is to eliminate him. Yes, they responded. We'll work in pairs. Let's go. The night raid members formed pairs. Roy was assigned to Chelsea's team. They set off into the imperial capital to hunt down Zanku. Due to Zanku's recent activities, the capital was heavily patrolled by imperial police. After arriving at their designated area, Roy led Chelsea to a quiet spot and waited. Chelsea, seeing that he wasn't actively searching for Zanku, asked curiously, "Roy, aren't we going to look for Zanku?" "No need. He'll come to us," Roy replied with a mysterious smile, leaning against a wall. Chelsea hesitated. She could transform into a cat to avoid detection by the Imperial police while searching. Just as she was contemplating whether to go off on her own, Roy spoke up. "He's here." He had sensed a gaze filled with malice directed at him. He instantly identified the source, Zanku. Zanku stood atop a tall tower, observing them from above. None of the night raid members escaped his notice. "Huh? Where?" Chelsea looked around but couldn't find Zanku. "Over there." Roy pointed towards Zanku's location. Chelsea followed his gaze and gasped. It was indeed Zanku. "Wait here. I'll take care of him," Roy said before vanishing in a flash. "Hey, wait." Chelsea tried to stop him, but he was already gone. She quickly followed. Even assassins have appeared. This city is truly dangerous. "Kakik, whose head shall I take first?" Zanku mused, looking down at the night raid members from his perch atop the tower. "I think you can start with your own," a voice said from behind him. "Who's there?" Zanku spun around. A young man stood there calmly. Zanku instantly recognized him as one of the assassins he had observed earlier. "So it's a night raid assassin." "Ha ha ha ha." Zanku laughed, not taking Roy seriously. "Are those your last words?" Roy shook his head. He wasn't one for idle chatter. He drew his sword and struck without hesitation. Thwack! Blood splattered as Zanku's head flew off his shoulders. "Why? Couldn't I see?" Zanku muttered in confusion before dying. Roy understood his question. Zanku's taiga was spectator, which granted him 5 different vision abilities: insight, farsight, clearsight, foresight, and illusion sight. These abilities allowed him to perceive emotions, see distant objects, see through obstructions, glimpse the future, and cast illusions. Zanku had activated foresight, but he couldn't see anything, hence his confusion. In the original story, Zanku, with his taigu, could hold his own against Akame for several rounds. He was no weakling. But without his taigu's abilities, he was instantly killed by Roy. After all, Roy was a Mao-class devil. The difference in their strength was too vast for Spectator to foresee his future. "Roy, where's Zanku?" The other night raid members arrived. "There," Roy said casually, pointing at the headless corpse on the ground. The night raid members were dumbfounded. Zanku had been killed so quickly? "That's definitely Zanku," Chelsea confirmed, pointing at the severed head. "That thing on his forehead must be his taigu." Lubbock retrieved the taigu from the head. "Well then, the mission is complete. Let's head back." "That was easy," Leon exclaimed, stretching. "Indeed. Let's return," Chelsea agreed. The night raid members headed back to their base. The next morning, Roy woke up to find someone sleeping beside his bed. "Hey, Sheil, why are you sleeping here?" "Mum." Sheil sat up groggily, rubbing her eyes. "Because starting today, you're my partner. Please take care of me." Roy was speechless. She had come to his room so early in the morning just for that? He knew Sheil loved to sleep in. They then set off on their mission. It wasn't really a mission, just a chance for them to get to know each other. Sheil was quite airhead and clumsy, often messing things up. So, she wasn't assigned any chores at the base. They arrived at a riverbank, and Sheil, in a rare display of motherly affection, offered Roy a lap pillow. She then shared her past with him. Sheila had grown up in the slums of the capital. She was often ridiculed for her lack of talent and clumsiness. Once, she had killed someone to protect her friend, but she had faced retaliation, and her parents were murdered. However, she had managed to kill all her attackers with surprising efficiency. That's when Sheila discovered her talent. She was clumsy and inept at almost everything, even walking without tripping. But when it came to killing, she was incredibly gifted. She was born to be an assassin. She then joined Night Raid. After hearing her story, Roy couldn't help but think that everyone had their own unique talents. Sheila, who couldn't do anything right and tripped over air, was a natural-born killer. Roy then shared his own story, though he embellished some details and omitted others. They spent a pleasant day together. The next day, Roy and Leon went to the slums. Their mission was to investigate the area. There were rumors of a group manufacturing and distributing a drug similar to a hallucinogen. They lured women from the slums with money, then controlled them with the drug, forcing them into prostitution. Roy and Leon's task was to eliminate this group. After a day of investigation, they finally located the group's hideout. That night, they prepared to take action. "All right, it's time to work and pay off my debt," Leon said, cracking her knuckles. Having grown up in the slums, she often helped the people there. This had led to her accumulating quite a debt to Night Raid. She was essentially working to pay it off. "By the way, Roy, you haven't seen my tiger yet, have you?" Leon asked, approaching him with a mysterious grin. "I haven't," Roy confirmed. "Then feast your eyes. Activate Beast King Transformation, Lionel." Leon's short blonde hair grew longer, reaching her waist. Two beast ears sprouted from her head, a tail emerged from behind her, and her hands transformed into claws. She had become a beautiful beast-eared girl. In this form, Leon's strength and senses were greatly enhanced. "Haha, how is it? Isn't it amazing?" she asked excitedly. "I get so pumped up whenever I transform." "Yes, it's very impressive. But this tail." Roy chuckled, reaching out to touch her tail. "Hey! What are you doing?" Leon snatched her tail away, her face flushed crimson. Her tail was a sensitive spot. "Ahem, I was just curious." "Let's focus on the mission," Roy said awkwardly, quickly changing the subject. Leon glared at him, then sighed and followed him. They climbed onto a rooftop, and Leon removed a tile, peering down into the building below. The room was filled with purple smoke. Dozens of women were smoking, their expressions vacant, lost in a drug-induced haze. This was the hallucinogenic drug created by the group. It was highly addictive and incredibly harmful. The door opened, and two men entered. One was tall with an eye patch, the other short and stout. Good. Keep earning money, and I'll give you more of the drug," the tall man said with a greedy smile. "Yes," the women replied in unison, their minds clouded by the drug. These women were forced into prostitution, their bodies exploited until they died. "Boss, look at her." The short man pointed at a woman lying on the ground. "She's useless now." "Dispose of her," the tall man said dismissively. "Bring in more women from the slums. Those women will do anything for money." "Yes, boss." The two men left. "Scum," Roy muttered coldly. "I recognize some of those women from the slums," Leon said, her voice low and dangerous. "This is infuriating. Let's finish them off quickly." Leon was enraged by the sight. Roy and Leon followed the two men to a meeting room. They were discussing how to expand their drug operation. Crash! The door burst open, and Roy and Leon entered. "Scum, your reign of terror ends today," Leon declared. "Intruders! Kill them!" The men reacted quickly, summoning their guards. However, they were mere humans, no match for Roy and Leon. Roy and Leon showed no mercy. Within moments, everyone in the room was dead. Huff! "Cleaning up trash is so satisfying," Leon said with a grin. "Since it's still early, how about we check on mine?" Roy suggested with a smile. Eh? Leon looked at him, then teased, still denying your interest in mine? Why else would you be so concerned about her? Leon-san, I never said I wasn't interested in her. In fact, I'm most interested in you, Roy replied with a playful grin. Humph. You little flirt, Leon scoffed, crossing her arms. Let's go. If they didn't hurry, she'll might be torn in half. Reconstructing a body weakens one's power, Roy thought to himself. They rushed towards Mine and Shiel's location. Mine and Shiel had completed their mission and were returning to base. However, they were intercepted by Seiryu Ubiquitous of the Imperial Police. Seeking revenge for her teacher, Ogre, she had been searching for them throughout the capital. Roy had been shocked by Saria's character when he watched the anime. She appeared to be a sweet and innocent girl, but she harbored a twisted sense of justice. To defeat evil, she had undergone horrific body modifications. Her entire body was riddled with scars, a testament to the pain she had endured. But Seiryu, driven by her twisted ideals, had persevered and gained immense power. She also possessed a biological-type Taigu, Hekatonkires, which she named Koro. Its trump card, Berserker, could drastically increase its power. The two sides clashed. Mine faced Koro, while Shiel fought Seiryu. Initially, they had the advantage, with 2 against 1. However, after Shiel severed Saria's arms, Seiryu activated Koro's Berserker mode. The situation reversed instantly. Mine was caught off guard and held captive by Koro, about to be crushed. Shiel came to her rescue, severing Koro's arm and freeing Mine. But then, the tide turned again. Seiria shot Shiel in the heart. Koro lunged at Shiel, its massive jaws wide open. Shiel! Mine screamed, watching in despair as Shiel was about to be devoured. Suddenly, a massive ice pillar shot from afar, impaling Koro. 2 figures appeared. It was Roy and Leon. Shiel! Leon's eyes burned with rage as she glared at Seiryu. Die! Enraged, Leon charged at Seiryu with incredible speed and punched her with full force. Seria's body was torn apart, her death instant and brutal. Leon, still fueled by fury, turned towards the approaching Imperial Police and attacked them. Roy rushed to Shiel's side, gently lifting her and carrying her to Mine. Mine, her body riddled with fractures and her arm broken, struggled to get up. Roy gently pushed her back down. Mine, I'm glad I could be of use in the end, Shiel said with a weak smile, her life fading. Shiel! Shiel! Mine sobbed uncontrollably. That wraps up this part of What If Reborn in Highschool DxD as a Lucifuge. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released 1 day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.